South China Morning Post, 28 September 2022, the Philippines is attempting to appease both the US and China by courting both at the same time. China duped the Philippines under Duarte, but the allure of Chinese money is too great, and Marcos is attempting to trick both China and America of their money. China, however, poses a threat to the Philippines at all times. U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd and Philippine Defense Secretary Jose Faustino Jr. will meet this week in Hawaii. This appears to be ordinary, but it is another move in the risky game Philippine President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. is playing. He may be unable to have his cake and eat it, too, as he seeks to strike a balance between relations with China and the U.S. The Philippines' primary source of foreign investment in China. Marcos has vowed to promote deeper ties with China, perhaps realizing, like his predecessor Rodrigo Duterte, that China will always be there. In addition to maintaining crucial and economic relations with China, the Philippines' major trading partner, with whom bilateral trade reached around $50 billion in 2019, Marcos also wants the U.S. to preserve U.S. national security. As part of its plan to compete with China's regional influence, the U.S. seeks to place its military assets in the Philippines. The issue is that the Philippines must provide security protection for the U.S. in exchange. It will be very challenging for Manila to maintain a balance in its relationships with both without jeopardizing the advantages it derives from either. Marcos was one of the select few world leaders that received a meeting with U.S. Vice President Joe Biden during the UN General Assembly. Biden also met with the leaders of Japan, South Korea, France, and Britain. Marcos was most likely one of the members of this exclusive club since the U.S. needs the Philippines just as much as, if not more so, as the Philippines needs the U.S. China's military has advanced to the point where there is concern it could overpower U.S. forces stationed in the South China Sea before reinforcements from outside bases reach. In the meantime, China's neighbors and rival South China Sea claims cannot stop its meddling in their legitimate exclusive economic zones. To fend off China, they require U.S. support. The U.S. must station its missiles, warships, and warplanes in the area to reassure claims. It requires hosts, and the Philippines are the most likely candidate. Southeast Asian countries may doubt the U.S. as a regional security guarantee and explore forging arrangements with Beijing if the U.S. fails to supply this. The U.S. could station people and defense equipment in the Philippines under its authority, possibly even intermediate-range missiles, if the U.S.-Philippines Enhanced Defense Cooperation Agreement, EDCA, which Duterte has postponed. However, if the Philippines grants the U.S. access, China might respond financially. We've had some hard times, but the fact is that it's an important partnership from our perspective. Like the U.S., China frequently wields its economic might as a political tool. It prohibited Chinese visitors from coming to South Korea in 2017 after Seoul installed an American missile defense system. China stopped arranging travel to the Philippines and forbade the import of Philippine bananas during the dispute over the Scarborough Shoal. Additionally, U.S. military equipment stationed at sites in the Philippines would turn into Chinese targets if hostilities started. All the countries in the region, and the Philippines especially, appreciate the contribution of the United States in keeping the peace in our region. The two spoke on the situation in the South China Sea and affirmed their support for peaceful dispute resolution and freedom of overflight and navigation. However, the U.S. equates the freedom of commercial navigation with the freedom of its military to surveil and endanger China's defenses. China does not protest routine military transit through the South China Sea. Still, it objects verbally and physically to military actions that violate its legal rights in its exclusive economic zone. But this blatantly anti-China rhetoric is just the beginning. Jose Manuel Romualdez, Manila's ambassador to the U.S., said the Philippines would permit U.S. forces to use its military bases in the event of a conflict over Taiwan if it is important for us, for our own security. In early September, when tensions between China and the U.S. over Taiwan were at an all-time high. Indeed, it is impossible to envisage the Philippines declining a request to the U.S. for access to military ports and airfields, says security expert Carlisle Thayer of Australia. The top two locations would be Subic Bay and Clark Airfield, followed by the 5 military facilities covered by the EDCA and other, as of yet unannounced, smaller facilities dispersed around the Philippines. Romualdez stated, "Hopefully, in the next 3 years, we can have all of these spots that we have previously identified." Regarding the construction work needed to modernize these sites. Naturally, all of this caused a stir in China. According to Wang Wenbin, a spokesman for the Chinese Foreign Ministry, there hasn't been a problem with freedom of navigation in the South China Sea. China consistently upholds international law and respects the freedom of overflight and navigation that all nations in the South China Sea enjoy. To keep the South China Sea peaceful and stable, China will continue correctly addressing maritime disputes with the directly affected nations, such as the Philippines, through conversation and consultation. We hope that countries outside the region will appreciate the region's efforts to uphold peace and stability in the South China Sea. This is the latest shot in the escalating U.S.-China conflict over the Philippines. Marcos wants the two to compete by offering carrots, but they might start brandishing or use sticks instead. Marcos is putting the Philippines at risk with his game. One must consider how rapidly Japan occupied the islands in the first island chain during World War II and how vulnerable the Philippines was. This will only be effective until the war breaks out.